Gosh, it's an honor to be here with you today, and I just want to start out by saying the one thing. As a registered medical cannabis patient, and I am from a different state that does not have a medical residency requirement, I would not ever want to restrict a recreational user from gaining the medical benefits of cannabis, okay? Just off the top of my head, I want you to know that. Some people don't actually get that, but I do. Today, and I'm not used to doing this, but I wrote this, and I'm sorry it's unedited. I usually kind of just come up and tell you like it is. But decided to write this. So today I'm humbled to see how we have come together across this great circle of patients, parents, caregivers, and medical professionals, generous with your time, generous with your ideals and beliefs, attending this historic day in Texas. Would you please give yourselves a round of applause? We've assembled from across the state, from across the diverse regions of this political spectrum in an effort to create a bridge of understanding and respect between representatives and you, the constituents. You've long suffered estrangement, indifference, and polarization, all while living with the nightmare of our illnesses. I feel immensely blessed to be with you, with unwavering support from wonderful individuals like Vincent Lopez and Tracy Ansley and other patient activists out there, which continue to fuel my passion, driving me to devote the time and offer the peace of mind essential to stand with you today in our endeavor to establish a medical cannabis program in Texas. The political climate of Texas, and I'm not talking about what happened last month as the climate kind of changed on us, is as diverse as its political, as diverse as its geography, as its physical geography. We understand that, you know, from the coastal plains of the Gulf of Mexico through the increasing populations of our megalopolises, which happen to be huge. Houston is over 10 million people in its entire spectrum. Dallas-Fort Worth is almost 8 million people in its metroplex area. So that's quite a large amount of people in the metroplexes, in the megalopolises. Along our national border to the heights of the Edward Plateau, the political climate changes drastically. And with cannabis reform, the changes are more diverse. So my objective today is to help you kind of gain an understanding of this political climate in Texas. First, what many representatives don't understand, what's medical cannabis anyway? That's the biggest issue sometimes, is what is it? The answer to this question can be found in many publications, and I highly recommend PubMed if you're really doing a lot of research and you're going to Google out there. But if you put cannabis into a search engine, you'll come up with about 128,000 actually different research reports. I was doing a paper, excuse me, I digress. I was doing a paper this week, writing an article on YARPs. Does anybody know what those are? Those are Youth At-Risk Behavior Surveillance Reports. And one was put out, and just found out that people really don't know that much about what goes on. And so they tend to research just anything they can. And I found out that if I put down drug surveys, I got 127 million hits. If I put in teen drug surveys, I got 247 million hits. And so it's a big situation out there. And so if you're going to do research, do it effectively. And this is like I'm going back right now and saying what we can find about cannabis, how it's defined. Medical cannabis is usually defined as medical marijuana. And in Texas, marijuana with an H. unfortunately. And it's usually referring to the use of cannabis and its constituents, cannabinoids and tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, and cannabidiol, or CBD. As medical therapy to treat disease and alleviate symptoms. Notice that the word cures is never in there. Those are anecdotal anecdotes. And it's not pure research. I can tell you that yesterday during an interview, I was asked, well, how does it help you? Does it help you? And I said, of course it does. I started out with 5 blast pattern brain lesions on the side of my right hemisphere, and now I have 2. I don't know why. But it's just anecdote. It's not research, and so that's the problem. And so you can't say it cures. It might remission. It might do things like that. But right now, research doesn't show that it cures. And so representatives know that. And so wording is very important when you're talking with your representatives. You can't go in there and go, it cures cancer. It cures this, it cures that. You can't do that. You have to go in and say, it's treatment for. It helps. You know, that's what they're looking at, okay? And so many legislative officials reserve the right that they believe they get it. They know what it is. They've become experts on cannabis. And when discussing the issue, I found that many of them have never even seen cannabis except during their high school experience or college or in the media. After hearing from you, the constituent, a typical response, and I heard this response during lobby day: I don't want it to be another Colorado. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, all this individual has heard about is those little isolated incidents, those little reports that come out in the AP wire and are sensationalized. And unfortunately, they don't have a knowledge base. I call that the Nancy Grace knee-jerk response. You know, that's basically what it is. Bless her heart, who could only get a TV show after being admonished by the Supreme Court of Georgia twice, you know. Anyway, after hearing from you, like I said, they don't want to know what it's all about. So I pondered this question. I wonder, how can someone denounce or even introduce legislation without a basic knowledge of the subject concerning that legislation? And that's a big problem, is the education of the representative themselves and the education of the constituent. And so you're here today to educate those representatives with your stories. Which brings us to the second point. Whose definition are we going to use? Are we going to use the state's definition of what medical cannabis should be? Are we going to educate them and let them know what a definition of medical cannabis should be? Would it not be prudent, if not necessary, to help educate said representatives? Sure. You can lead a horse to water too. However we define it, representatives and patient activists must come together to find ways to create effective medical cannabis reform in Texas. I truly believe we can and must be successful in our endeavor. If we must, we should license patients through the public health department, not law enforcement. A safe and quality control system is needed for dispensing of medical cannabis. Thus, the licensing of facilities should be made available throughout the state. The licensing of grow facilities to provide the various genetic strains, and there are over 1,000, by the way, for individual medical needs should be monitored and controlled, ensuring the quality of the medicine is to the standards within the industry. The right for a patient to cultivate their own medical cannabis is also paramount for various reasons, including cost, personal therapeutic interaction with the process, and control of their own medical cannabis in all aspects of how it's grown. I know very many people, a few of them are actually lawyers. They grow their own, they only smoke their own, everything because they know what's in it, they know how it's grown and everything else, and they won't smoke anything else. Even at festivals, they won't do that. And so it's in a state where it's medically legal and actually recreationally legal now. So people just understand that the right to cultivate your own is paramount. For the most effective use, medical cannabis should be derived from whole plant medicine and not from industrial plant medical derivatives. Seeds and stalks cannot provide the quality or the amount of CBD oil needed for medical purposes. Leaf and flower material from the cannabis plant must be used for the CBD oil to meet the highest quality medical standards. The power of these questions to trigger strong, polarized reactions demonstrates that even in our high-tech world of instant access to information, our spirits hunger for answers. To me, the most important challenge has always been not whether we can address medical cannabis reform in Texas, but how we address medical cannabis reform in Texas. Should one have to kowtow to a representative to get their message heard? I'm truly tired of being at the suffrage of my representative, and I know you are too. There are three phrases that I always consider when having a conversation with my representatives. I may bow to many, but I kowtow to no one. Don't presume my kindness or my illness as a weakness. And my third phrase is, please don't be condescending to me. Personally, it's insulting. Your story is the most important part of the conversation. It's why you are here. If they've become distracted and appear that they're not listening to you, stop. Wait until you've regained their complete attention. You deserve it. When medical cannabis is entered into a conversation, attention shifts, by the way. As the quality of the attention shifts, representatives listen with great care not only to what you say, but to the message between the words, your tones, your gestures, the flicker of feelings across your face, and then they concentrate on your heart and your meaning. They are sizing you up as much as you're sizing them up. And as much as you're searching for their understanding. The yearning, wonder, wisdom, fear, and confusion of patients becomes central to the message. Questions from representatives become more important than the answers given. And so the discussion begins. During the discussion, masks can drop away. Patients become willing to share their story that they once feared would provoke distance, even in their families and best friends. They risk exposing the shame and pain their peers and others might judge as weakness. Seeing deeply into the perspective of others, accepting what has been a major need themselves, representatives are discovering compassion and begin to build a bridge of understanding. Clearly, this is not an all-encompassing description of the trials and barriers faced by patients seeking relief from medical cannabis. To engage in those realities would take us into a realm of belief and dogma. Activists are beginning to refer to marijuana as cannabis in our culture, thank goodness. Scholars are analyzing the complexity of the issue, and politicians are struggling for solutions as they lament the continued concern of our youth. A consensus is emerging that a dark void exists among our youth. Well, there's a way that we can address it. It's called education and harm reduction. Naturally, our state reflects this problem, but together we can face these questions nourishing medical cannabis reform in Texas. Or is it too tedious or controversial to allow us to move forward? My belief is that we have become increasingly knowledgeable and better equipped to meet this challenge now more than any other time in our history. On one hand, the diversity of beliefs and ideas today in most communities is so overwhelming that no single representative could possibly be appropriate as an official or even unofficial forerunner in the cannabis reform. On the other hand, with the joining of medical professionals in a quest to for answers to the messages of the need of medical cannabis, politicians can no longer pretend that banning the medical cannabis question is feasible. And the growing awareness among patients, parents, caregivers, and medical professionals is that the gap between legislation and education is the root cause long left out of the analysis and the treatment of medical cannabis use for a multitude of maladies. We must remain steadfast in our mission to change the way medical cannabis is regarded by our families, friends, medical professionals, and mostly our individual representatives if we are to change cannabis reform in Texas. When I ponder the issue of repeal or legalization, medical or recreational, I reflect on what British historian C. Northcote Parkinson once quoted as saying, "Delay is the deadliest form of denial." Can representatives continue to be so rigid, so inflexible to the needs of their constituents, selfish for their own existence or moral codes? The continued delay of cannabis reform, whether governmental or organizational, is a denial of one's rights, and for some, very deadly. Some cannot wait for the perfect time. Some cannot wait for the perfect law. For them, time is a precious commodity. The clock is ticking. It's the 11th hour. And we cannot wait until 11:59. Thank you very much.